Okay, welcome everyone. I'm so sorry I was late. It's great to be here. Have you given the context as to why we formed this group, Malavali?
No, I was just waiting for people to turn up.
Fabulous. But as people are now here, let's get started. Malavali and I have known each other for a long time, and we have been inundated with people asking for support. And I think it is, lots of you messaged and put in the Google form, it's kind of indicative of where we're at perhaps in education at the moment, that people are looking for their exit strategy. And maybe not an immediate one, but thinking about planning in the next year, 2 years, and where you might want to be. So we thought it'd be helpful where people can support one another and walk that journey together, because one of the biggest things that we have found is that sometimes you can feel a bit isolated and out on a limb when you're working for yourself. And actually having that community around you hopefully will help you. And we're both trainers and spend a lot of time coaching and training. So we thought actually rather than being informal, to give it a bit of structure might actually help people. So today's taster session is an opportunity to meet us if you don't know us, get a sense of what our offer kind of is, and then there's different ways to then engage kind of moving forward. Do you want to add anything, Malavali?
No, that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. Let's click on then, shall we? Let's get started.
I think we'll start with confidentiality and privacy because a few people have mentioned that they don't want their employers to know that they're looking at this course or on the course. And just to reassure everyone that this is highly confidential, any sensitive information, it's protected. It's only shared between myself and Hannah. And in terms of privacy, we are both GDPR compliant. You can see our privacy policies and so on online. For us, it's really important that things like social media will be advertising the course and so on, but unless you give us permission or you tag us in, we won't be tagging you in and say, oh, this person had something great to say. Yeah, so it won't be like that. In terms of psychological safety, it's something myself and Hannah are, well, I'd say it's our strong suit, really. We believe in having a supportive atmosphere. We want you to feel safe without fear of judgment. Venturing into the entrepreneurial world is a completely different world to education. And it's a massive learning curve. And there are, as far as we're concerned, there are no stupid questions. There are no silly questions because we've probably asked all them before between us and still asking, still asking. So yeah, so I don't know if there's any questions about that or we can move on.
Or maybe just reassurance.
Yeah.
I see a few nods, like a few sighs when you shared that slide, Malavali.
Right. Hannah?
So anyone who's met me or has heard me talk before, I love a bit of Simon Sinek, and I know lots of people use the golden circle. And I think it's an interesting one that when we are working in the sector and in the system and we have a role and a function, our why is often really clear, but we both coach people who are unhappy and unfulfilled and leaving the system. And I think sometimes it's because the why's got lost along the way. And when you are transitioning out and you are really like reframing your identity, like without putting too much weight on it, that's what it is. We are reframing who we are and what we do and how we talk about ourselves. I think going back to our why, our how, and our what, and capturing it is a really helpful exercise to do. We'll also use the Ikigai model at some point as well. And I had to do a big piece on like, I'd always had that currency of like the job title and people understanding who I was and what I was doing. And I had to really think about like, what is my why? What do I want to be doing beyond a paid role? How am I going to do it? How am I going to get paid to do it? And what impact do I want to be having and what legacy do I want to be creating in a different way? Because I think it's so much clearer when you're in a role with a job description. When you work for yourself, you don't have a job description. You don't have any accountability. You don't have anyone giving you PM targets or feedback. So you do feel like you're feeling your own way. So I think going back to that golden circle is a helpful way to kind of like almost anchor it and keep adding to it. And for us, I've said a little bit about our why already. We want to be able to help. We wish that we had a bit more guidance. A lot of people we ask for feedback on the offer, but like we wish this existed 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago when we were doing that transition. The process can be quite thorny and quite like one step forward, two steps back. So if we can help expedite that and make that smoother for you, then that's what we're here to do. And then the kind of the what bit is like being really clear on the kind of the what's the impact you want to be having beyond the day job, if it's a parallel side hustle or longer term working for yourself, and how you want to be contributing to education, but in a different way. So one of my things is I don't say I'm a teacher now as I'm an educator. I was a teacher for 20 years. I now work in education. I support schools. I don't work in a school. So just being able to articulate things like that, I think, are quite helpful. Let's move on, Malavili.
Okay. So in terms of myself and Hannah, we've got a lot of synergy between us. We both left the school system. We're both freelancers and we work in similar fields. As Hannah said, we get approached by people within our network. We've been there. And it's interesting what you said there about the why. I'd always wanted to be a teacher since the age of 16. And I remember the day I got my PGC, when we graduated, was like such a great moment for me, because I was like, finally, I'm a teacher. This is who I am. And it's who I was for another 20 years. So then it was like, now what? This isn't what I want to do anymore. But I'm very passionate about it. But it's that identity crisis, and that in itself can be very lonely, especially if you're driven like myself. Then I don't know where I'm driving to, so it's very it's confusing. I found it a total crisis, like I was going through a midlife crisis or something, because I was proud to be. I was evangelical about teaching when I first started. And what we're both very strong on as well is networking and building a community. We're both, that's community building is a strong part of what we do. And we believe in the strength of not just us mentoring and empowering others, which is also a strength, but also the power of the community, that you learn from each other. And that's our why, because we want to create this community because it's a growing community, a rapidly growing community.
140 people in 2.5 weeks. I think it shows the need.
Yeah, there's a need, and there's an awful lot we can all learn from each other, and we can all ask those questions that we want to ask.
And these are some of the hows you've already met. So because it's a professional network, we wanted to use LinkedIn. That's why the LinkedIn group's there. The taster session is an opportunity to get a feel for what we're thinking, what we can offer, but we're also open to that iterating based on feedback. Equally with the program, we mapped out what we thought the six sessions would look like. Some people would like that program to be collapsed and run a bit faster. Some people would like it to be evenings and weekends. We've got some things there to think about, but ultimately the content's quite clear about the things we'd wished we'd known and the order in which we need to be working through those things to get ourselves set and ready. And I guess it depends on whether you're out there trying to regroup or whether you're planning for a future kind of departure. And then the kind of the mentoring through the group, but if people are looking for one-to-one coaching, that's also an option. And then we're going to be leveraging the community to offer some more like skills-based expertise and masterclasses where there might be particular things you want to look at and learn. And we can leverage the kind of the expertise and experience from the wider network to come in and run some masterclasses. We haven't planned those yet. That will be the kind of the next layer, the next extension of how we perhaps work together longer term.
And so when it comes to our what's, our purpose in that sense is to get your potential, use your potentials to your advantage. You've got all this knowledge and skills and experience within education. You've been in education for so long. It's growing your toolkit beyond the classroom, beyond leadership within the school system, to then take that to the business sector. And that is that's a major mind shift from going from being a teacher to calling yourself a business person or an entrepreneur. It took me a few years to call myself a business person because it just felt a bit, a bit strange. And the idea is we want you to connect with like-minded people. There's room for everyone. Like, I think both Hannah and I, in terms of, we talk about community, but we're not competitive. We don't have that competitive mindset. And so we both work in the same field. There's room for everyone. And so you might see people within the LinkedIn group that want to do similar things to what you want to do, but there might be the other side of the country or whatever. There's room for everyone, and we all support each other as well. And we want to mentor you and coach you to help you to achieve what you want to achieve. Oh, me again. So a little bit, a little bit about me. So I'm a leadership consultant, coach, and trainer now. I started off year 2000, completing my PGCE, age 28. So previous to that, I kind of fell into becoming a bookie. So I was a turf accountant for many years, and I was moving up the ranks of that. And I was like, it's not really what I want to do. And I miss history. So I finally did my PGCE, but always wanted to teach. Moved up the ranks again quite quickly, probably because of my management experience previously, ultimately leading CPD across a multi-academy trust, which is when I set up my Twitter account, Mal CPD, which has now become my business. That's where the name came from, because it was Mal CPD. And that's what I did. And 2013, I had my first son, and that changed everything. Previous to that, I was very career minded in terms of not wanting to be a head teacher or anything. For me, leading CPD across a multi-academy trust was like the best job in the world. That was the highest I ever wanted to go, because I just loved it. I was still working with staff and still teaching. Then we had our second son and moved down to Bournemouth, and I'd say that changed our lives, because Bournemouth's quite an entrepreneurial place. And unlike London, London's very much work, work, work. It was more a case of working to live. There was a different mindset down there. And my husband was having a rough time in his new school down there. A really rough time. He was really struggling. And I just said, let's quit. I was on maternity leave. And yeah, so that's what we did. We both ended up resigning from our positions. And whilst I had a 6-month-old, I started my level 7 in coaching and set up my limited company, Mal CPD. I then, because I was in Bournemouth, I didn't really have a network, because my network was in London, and still even that was quite small, because all I was doing was working non-stop. And so I got involved in lots of different things. I became a network leader for Women Ed, created my own little hub. So I got to know people in the local area, upped my game on social media, so more people knew about me. And then the pandemic hit. And that meant that I had to change the way that I worked again, because what I was doing was going up and down the country running training in different schools, like I would do, like I was a CPD leader. And then because of the pandemic, it was like, okay, we need to pivot. We need to absolutely pivot. And so that's when I launched my first online course, doing everything through Zoom. And then both my husband and I were online, because he's a maths, physics, and chess tutor. And we thought, well, let's leave. We can do this anywhere. So we got married and moved to Spain with our kids, and that's where we are. We're in Valencia now. So yeah, that's my story. In terms of what I had in my toolkit to help me, obviously coaching and mentoring, and my training skills in my role. What I was very good at was course design. So that's what I do now, is design my own courses. What I didn't know I was good at was graphic design. I didn't even have words for that until I was putting this PowerPoint together. Go, what would you call that? Oh, it's called graphic design. I'm pretty good at graphic design. So I'm actually looking into doing more courses in that. So a lot of what I do is just based on what I like. Event planning, because when you're responsible for CPD across a multi-academy trust of hundreds of staff, and then it was like planning a wedding when I was planning insets, blogging, again, network and community building. Again, when you're responsible for CPD, you need to be able to talk to lots of different people across the trust and try and build bridges between people. And so when you're running your own business, you need to be able to talk to anyone, I believe, and get used to talking to lots of different people about yourself, which isn't easy in the beginning. I've always been quite resilient, and I have a lot of perseverance and determination. And I think that's kept me in good stead, because there's lots of highs and there's lots of lows. I also have the support of my husband as well. So that makes a huge difference. But also the support of my network. I know Hannah's been a great support to me over the years. People like Patrick Otley O'Connor, Jill Berry, a whole range of people I know they talk about me when I'm not in the room. They mention, and that's amazing for me that they do that. And having people like that in your corner is fantastic. In terms of lows, I know Jeannie, you've mentioned this, full disclosure. In my last school, I basically had the equivalent of PTSD. Pretty sure I did. It took me years to recover from leaving that school. It was a school in special measures. There was a very big brother attitude at that school, which isn't my style. It was a school that did not fit my values as well. And my head teacher was one of those where everything was urgent and important, everything. So I stopped making lists. I'm like the queen of lists. I stopped making lists. I just look at my email to see what he wanted me to do next. And I went from that to having babies, having a baby and moving and all of that, and then setting up my business. So then it became like everything. Oh, I want to do my website. I want to do this. I want to do that. I need to set up this. I had no boundaries. So it was overwhelming. Social media I wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for social media, but it's also a bit of a downfall for me as well, because I could be scrolling all hours of the day. I still find the feast and then the famine can be quite difficult. So there are certain months of the year where I get a lot of money, and there are certain months of the year, like August, where you get nothing, absolutely nothing. So that can be, in the early days especially, quite difficult. Another low for me was doing supply work. I didn't put it, and what I found really difficult was being in staff meetings and not saying anything, because I used to be a leader, and seeing things where it wasn't my job to deal with it, and hearing things that I would definitely have words with staff about, because of the way they were talking to staff. Not being in control of that, not having my finger in that pie, if you like, was difficult. And the pandemic, where you're homeschooling and running a business, I found that really difficult. But I have to say, the absolute high for me, it has been the flexibility and the quality time with my kids. I haven't missed a single assembly or sports day or anything like that. My youngest son didn't have any childcare until he started school full time, and then it was the pandemic, so he was at home. The quality time I have with my family outweighs any low. It's priceless. Other highs are things like I said, the word of mouth, the testimonials, repeat contracts and things like that, where people want you back, and they tell other people. You hear from, like last week, I heard somebody say, "Oh, you come highly recommended." I was like, "Oh, from who?" And I think they're in the room somewhere, the person that recommended me. So I'm like, so I just felt it feels good when you're being recommended. So yeah, for me, the absolute high and the well-being. One thing I didn't put on there is my well-being. I do more exercise than I've ever done before. I go for walks along the beach. There's lots of things I do now that I didn't have time to do before. Yeah, Hannah.
So I'm going to do the same. And the reason why we're doing this is that so you might have a sense of who we are now, but how we got to where we are now. And the kind of the toolkit, I think we as teachers are really bad at seeing all the transferable skills we have. We think that all we can do is teach. And actually, we've got an abundance of skills. So being able to tease out what's in your toolkit, be able to articulate, that's really important. And we do believe in the warts and all. Okay, so that's why we're giving you our lows and keeping it real. What keeps us awake at night, but also what fills our cup. So I spent 19 years working in secondary schools, working in academies and academy chains, and I pretty much got promoted every year for 19 years. And I think that's because I haven't got children, and I was always present. But I had lots of different opportunities, and I kind of got to headship, and I really enjoyed headship. I also found it extremely stressful. I was a startup head. And I kind of turned 40 and thought, is this it? Is this my life? Is this the next 25 years? And I decided to resign. And that was when my new chapter began. I'd never planned this chapter. I've always had a plan for everything. And it was quite weird starting a new chapter with no plan and no idea what I wanted to do. But it just felt like it was the right thing to do. Some of the things that had helped me, I guess, and not in a conscious way, because I had co-founded Women Ed and I've been very big on social media, doing events and networking, going and like being invited to things, and then starting Diverse Ed. I didn't do those two things to then get paid work out of them, but I have ended up getting paid work out of them. Okay, so thinking about how we build our networks and how we leverage those relationships, and actually not my credibility comes from the stuff I did for free before I actually left Headship, has definitely served me. When I left Headship, I did freak out a little bit because we then went into the pandemic, and it wasn't the plan to like leave Headship and then be stuck at home. So I did take on a few contracts. I did a short stint in HEI, wasn't for me. And I basically decided in May 2020, let's stop whinging about all the bad bosses and be my own bad boss. That was my decision. Like no one can, surely I can't do as badly as some of these bosses are doing to me. So my independent journey started in May 2020, which is actually a year and a bit after I left Headship. I kind of like messed around for a year and then decided to fully go independent. And I went through a lot of coaching. I had a lot of coaching, business mentoring. I also worked with a brander on how to position myself. And initially, I launched my Hannah Wilson website, which is my work: leadership training, leadership coaching, leadership support. And that's what I started with. But as we then were in the pandemic, as George Floyd was murdered, as we became more conscious and more aware and more like the DEI needs were growing, I wasn't planning on doing the Diverse Ed website, but everyone expected me to do it. So within 6 months, I launched 2 websites, which was quite overwhelming. I've also got 2 newsletters. But I've got 2 parts then to my work. And my work is the Hannah Wilson website, and our work, and that's the work I kind of curate for others, is on the Diverse Ed website. Simultaneous to that, I wasn't planning on being a coach, but every man and their dog asked me to coach them. And I didn't want to coach them without a qualification. So I then signed up for a qualification. I thought if I'm going to coach people, I need to be qualified. So I spent a lot of Saturdays online during the pandemic training to coach. I actually did 2 qualifications. I've got my ILM and my ICF. But amazing networking where you weren't in rooms with just teachers. Like I wanted to be in cross-sector spaces. I wanted to be doing work beyond education. And my ICF group in particular, I was the only teacher out of 24 people in a global coaching program, met amazing people. I then did another coaching qualification where I flew to Philadelphia. I've now got 20 American coaches who I catch up with regularly. So thinking about how your network can expand quite quickly, I think being clear on what certification you want to do, but how you're going to do them and who you want to be meeting, I think is quite key. And in the midst of all that, we published a book, which does help, I think, open doors sometimes. That the people who don't know you from social media, because we have to remember that only 10% of school teachers are on X, that actually the other 90% are probably in the library. So the book actually helped open that door as well. So if you want to jump on for me, please, Mal. So my toolkit, pre-teaching, I had a lot of jobs in hospitality. I've always worked in bars and restaurants. And I think I perhaps didn't see the kind of the transferable skills there, but about being a people person, being an organizer, being able to work under pressure. I then did a stint working in event management. So those of you who know me know that I love to organize events, virtual and in person. And that's kind of like how I work at scale. So those skills were there. I've always taught English, drama, and media studies, but I've ended up holding the kind of the marketing, PR, and comms role in most of the schools and trusts I've worked in. So things like the social media and the newsletter felt quite natural to me. And I think my brain's wired in that way about the kind of the outward facingness. I think what I did have a wobble when I started blogging. I think it does feel like you're standing naked on your website when you start hitting publish on blogs. But that's where I really found my voice, and I honed my ability to talk about what I was doing and why I was doing it. Because I think sometimes on social media it's so small and gets taken out of context. So the blogging helped me make sense of everything. You'll know I'm a networker already. I've built different communities, and I bounce on and I leave communities for other people to then run, and I start a new community based on my need and where I am. I move around quite a lot. I didn't realise how good I was at negotiation, but I think having a self-employed mum, a self-employed dad, and a self-employed sister, and we've always talked about money at home, I'm actually really good at negotiation. And I just thought everyone else also negotiated everything. So negotiating contracts and money, making sure that my team get paid equitably is something that I do a lot of. We talked about coaching and mentoring and training already. Similar to Malavili, I'd always worked in the kind of the programmatic space. So thinking about curating longer pieces of work, and getting more people onto one course than working with lots of people piecemeal one-to-one is definitely how my brain's wired. And I've mentioned that context of the family. Like for 20 years, I had a really successful career, but my mum and dad and sister never got it. Like they never got who I was and what I was doing. My world was so foreign to them. And as soon as I went independent, it was like there was this switch, and they started talking to me about work because they understood my world, and they could talk about self-employedness. They could talk about VAT returns. And actually, I got loads of help and advice from people in that second chapter of my life. So that was been an interesting kind of like layer. My highs and lows then, I'll start with the highs. I do love the flexibility, but I don't necessarily always take advantage of it. My dad reminds me every Sunday night, I thought you left headship so you'd be less busy, you'd be working less, and I'm probably working more, but I love my job and I love traveling and I love what I'm doing. I don't get stressed. I don't have people holding to account. I don't deal with many complaints. So I choose perhaps to work flexibly, but also to be busy with it. I get trapped. I hate feeling trapped, and I hate like being in the same place for too long. So I am doing a lot of travel, both within the UK and internationally. As I said, I haven't got kids, so that's perhaps an easier thing for me to be doing. But I love getting a gig in Dubai, going out there for a week, going on holiday afterwards, and so like building that flexibility into my working patterns. And I've done quite a lot of intentional networking with international educators. A high for me was hitting the VAT threshold. So that kind of like affirms, I guess, how much money you're earning, what your earning potential is. It feels like you're a bit more serious, I guess, as a business when you're adding VAT, was just in my mindset. And similar to Malavili, like the kind of the repeat contract. So I've just had 2 emails this week from organizations I've worked with now for 4 years. We don't even need to have a meeting. Had an email from one of them saying, can you do these 6 sessions for our union next year? Tell us the dates, here's the themes, here's the rate, please invoice us. So it does get easier. That when you have those repeat clients who know you and trust you, I get a bit bored hearing my own voice delivering the same session, but it's also easy money because it's known content. Another high was getting an EA. I'm good at admin, but I hate admin. I get so many emails. I have so many documents and trackers. Madeline knows I love a color-coded tracker. And having an EA to help me with the volume has definitely kept me sane. So thinking about like the kind of the business model and what support you need, I outsource everything. So I don't know why anyone would want to try and do their own books. I pay a bookkeeper. I can't build websites. I pay a website designer. Like we can spend so much time trying to do everything. Think about what you can outsource, because I know I can earn more money training and coaching than trying to build a website. Okay, so thinking about that's quite key. And I love growing a team. Like I'm not someone who likes working by myself. I'm an independent person, an autonomous person, but I like being part of a team. I like holding space for a team. I've got a team of coaches and a team of trainers, and I love collaborating. And that's why Madeline and I have looked for an opportunity for a while now to like bring our work together. So that's my highs. My lows, and this one's really been pushed this week, boundaries. If one more person WhatsApps me about work, I might lose my mind. Like for me, WhatsApp is for friends and family. I make it really clear to everyone, please don't WhatsApp me. And I literally have had 8 in 24 hours. So for me, I'm very accessible. And if people don't get a reply to an email, they message me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and if they've got my number, they'll WhatsApp me. So thinking about how you put boundaries in, I don't want 2 phones. I want people to respect my boundaries and email me and not text me. So reinforcing that's quite key. Madeline talked about feast and famine. The kind of the cash flow bit, my clients were really good at paying for the first couple of years, and they've got really crap at paying in the last 6 months. I'm constantly chasing invoices. Well, I actually say to people, I'm a small business. Your invoice is 30 days overdue. I can't pay my staff this month. You need to pay your invoices on time. So, and the bigger the client, the worse they are at paying. Okay. And the amount of time it takes to fill in sodding forms for Max to pay you also drives me crazy. So my EA does them for me. Okay. So the cash flow piece is tricky. We'll talk about this more in the actual program, but I invoice for everything in advance, because then you're not chasing people for money after you've delivered. And I've always got the money coming in, but then you're spending the money that actually you need in the future. So that's just an interesting conundrum. In the early days, I said yes to a few things I shouldn't have said yes to, because I was just stressed. My mortgage wasn't get paid. And I very quickly disengaged myself from some of those contracts that just weren't right. I needed to make sure I was going to have enough money in my bank. So thinking about what you say yes and no to. Equally, my capacity got quite busy quite quickly, or quite reduced quite quickly. And I said no to a few what seemed like individual gigs. And I recommended other people, and I lost massive contracts that are ongoing contracts for others. So thinking about what you say yes and no to, and where the potential earning longer term is for some of those things, is a consideration. When I said no to one keynote, I didn't realize it was going to be a 3-year consultancy that they were looking for. Okay, and actually it was like 6 figures. So my capacity is my ongoing thing I think about, and I'm coached on. I'm not Wonder Woman, and I think I need to remind myself that sometimes. And I don't want to be working 24/7, and I could be. Emails have been in my life. I've not got under 100 emails in my inbox for 12 months, and that stresses me out. I think I might just delete them all and start over. And the holding people to account is a really tricky bit. Like I know I'm a very good people developer and line manager when you're in a formal structure and you've got a job description and you've got targets and you've got meetings. It's really hard holding people to account when you're all freelancers. And that's an ongoing piece that I'm thinking about how I navigate that. And having contracts with people you are collaborating with is really key, because there's often a lot of assumptions that you need to actually make explicit to protect you both longer term. So that's my highs and lows. Back to you, Madeline.
Next program. So there's more information on the Eventbrite, but yeah, we've kind of, are we going to go through all the bits?
It's up to you. Well, I think a little bit of each.
Maybe a little bit, yeah. I mean, like with motivation, I think it's important to know your why. And yeah, so we talked about that at the beginning, and we've talked about mindset briefly as well, and money matters, because getting your head round this idea. I was talking to one of my coachees the other day about you know, selling yourself. Is if you see it's changing your mind on that. It's reframing how you look at it. And same with marketing. the idea behind all of this is that you get knowledge, you get personal development, but you also get skills to be able to move forward, and know what your message is. What is it that we encourage you to network, but how are you gonna, what's your elevator pitch? Which the first time I heard that phrase, I was like, oh God, I have to, I have to have something that's worth 20, 30 seconds to explain what I do. And I just found it an onerous thing. But actually, now it's like, yeah, this is what I do. And it's getting used to those kind of things, because I think even as a leader, I didn't do that in schools. I didn't go, oh yes, I'm an assistant principal, I'm responsible for this, this and this, but it's much more, as Hannah said, it's more defined when you've got a job role. And in early days, things might change. You might change the way you do things, and your messaging may change, but that's okay. Hannah, do you want to say anything?
I'm just going to add that like 2, 3, and 4 are the ones that come up for me the most, and when I'm supporting others, that Diana Sagi rang me on the 1st of May 2020 when I started my business, and she said, I've got one piece of wisdom for you. Remember, you are now a business person doing education, not an educator doing business. And you've got to remind yourself that you are a business owner, and it needs to be business sense. And that stayed with me now for 4 years, because I think our mindsets are so teacher focused. And we have to remember that when you work for yourself, you're ultimately running a business, and you have to make decisions that are right for your business. And what you say yes and no to needs to be in service of your business, whereas we used to be in service of our communities and of our pupils. It's also the mindset piece that I'm still serving education, I'm still serving pupils and their families, just in a different way. One of the big things that comes up is around rates and negotiation. So we've done lots of work supporting people on like what you charge for different things. We can talk about that in detail. And my final bit is around the marketing. I find it staggering how many people want to work independently but not do social media. I'm like, but people won't know who you are, and you won't get paid. You won't get any work. So people who struggle with the social media piece, you've got to get past that boundary, because you will not, like, how will people know who you are and find out about you and pay you to do work if you're not prepared to be out there? And that's something to perhaps really work through. Because if you don't want to be out there hustling, ultimately, go and get a job being paid to do what you want to do that's not in a school. So that's another option. So you can get consultancy contracts, you can get coaching contracts. You really need to think about, am I prepared to actually be out there all the time? It can get exhausting, constantly hustling. Yeah. So it's being prepared to do that and thinking about how you do that. And like even just working manually on this, there's 2 people tweeting and 2 people doing messages. We've halved our workload. So sometimes the collaboration piece is quite key as well.
Yeah. I think, and finally, the last session is mapping, but what we've talked about is having possibly a document that you fill in as you go along, that it's not like the 10 Commandments set in stone. It's more a case of it's an evolving document for your business, and looking at what is it that you want to achieve, what is your ultimate goal, what are your funneling systems, because you might have ultimately, like I've got a level 5 in coaching and mentoring, but how do I get people to funnel into that? And so that's what the mapping's all about. Where is it you want to go? How, why, and so on. So the program ultimately is designed to get you from classroom to startup. That's why we're using that phrase, because we want to support you in those areas. And again, it's not just business sense, but it's a mindset and personal development as well, because it is, like Hannah was saying, we're so used to, as educators, giving so much of ourselves for free, our time, our souls, you just give so much to education. But I find running my own business, I'm still supporting schools. In fact, I'm supporting more schools now than I did as a senior leader. But I've still got, I'm getting paid for it, and I've still got my soul, and I've still got my sanity, and I'm not as stressed as I was before. Yeah. So what's next?
For the support. I think most of you on the LinkedIn group already, I've sent you the coaching package. We'll do an email following this anyway with the slides and with the recording, just so you can catch up. We've mentioned the masterclasses, and this final one, this was Madeline's brainchild last week. I'm in Spain. Why don't we get everyone to come and do a retreat? Why don't we come and spend a weekend in Spain mapping out our businesses? I was like, hell yes, please. Because actually a lot of people have said, like, I work full time, I can't get to the taster, I'm still based in a school. Will you run the program in the evenings? We work at weekends, and we both have well-being pledges that we don't want to be working evenings and weekends. So how we can support, we might do an intense day in a half term, for example, where we do 3 sessions in one. I love the idea of us all doing a weekend together, whether that's part of the program or separate to the program. So just want to plant that seed that Madeline's got doors and hotels down the road for us to open.
Yeah, and a spa.
And we can business expense it.
That's true, we can.
I'm wondering whether we should stop recording at this point so that people ask questions and feel safe to ask those questions. So should we hit stop?